Hey, would you mind catching the next one? It'll only be a minute.
Any particular reason?
I just prefer riding alone. It's nothing personal.
Sometimes it only takes 15 seconds to reveal who we really are. It was 8:14 in the morning when the doors began to close. Just another Tuesday. Just another elevator. Just another moment that should have meant nothing at all. But it meant everything. Because in those 15 seconds between the polished marble lobby and the ascending cable car, a choice was made. A line was drawn, and 2 lives changed forever. Before we start, tell me where you're tuning in from. Hit like and subscribe. This is the place for stories that truly stick. Now let's begin. Let me tell you what happened. Michael Chen was standing in the lobby of the Preston Tower, briefcase in one hand, coffee in the other, watching the elevator numbers descend. 18. 15. 12. He adjusted his tie. First day nerves, you know the feeling. That mixture of excitement and fear, hope, and uncertainty. He'd worked his entire career for this moment. Senior Vice President of Operations at Morgan & Blake Associates, the biggest consulting firm in the city. Floors 18 through 22. Corner offices, floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place where reputations are made. The elevator chimed, the doors slid open, and standing inside was a woman. Early 40s, beige coat, leather bag, the kind of polished, professional look that screams, "I belong here." Her finger was already on the close door button, but she paused when she saw him approaching. Michael smiled. Just that automatic morning smile we all give. That unspoken good morning between strangers sharing space. He stepped forward, and that's when she spoke. "Hey, would you mind catching the next one? It'll only be a minute." Michael stopped. Confused, he glanced behind him. Nobody there, just him. Just her. Just an empty elevator with plenty of room. Any particular reason? Rebecca Morrison, because that's who she was, though Michael didn't know it yet, shifted her weight. You could see it in her eyes, that flicker, that discomfort, that moment when someone realizes they're about to reveal something they'd rather keep hidden. "I just prefer riding alone," she said. "It's nothing personal." And there it was, that phrase. Nothing personal. The same words people use right before they do something deeply, devastatingly personal. Michael felt it. That familiar tightness in his chest, that weight. He'd felt it 1,000 times before, in stores where security followed him, in restaurants where he got seated in the back, in meetings where people assumed he was the assistant, not the director. He knew this feeling. He knew it like an old enemy. "Not personal?" he asked quietly. "Or not comfortable?" Rebecca's jaw tightened. "I'm more comfortable this way." The silence that followed lasted maybe 2 seconds. But in those 2 seconds, Michael made a choice. He could let it go. He could smile, step back, wait for the next elevator. He could swallow it like he'd swallowed it 100 times before. Or he could ask the question, the one question that would change everything. "Because of me?" he said softly. "Or because I'm Asian?" The doors slid shut. Rebecca didn't answer. She didn't need to. The closing doors were answer enough. And Michael stood there, alone in that marble lobby, staring at his own reflection in the polished steel where her face had been just moments before. The hum of the ascending elevator filled the silence. He didn't move. He couldn't. Because what had just happened wasn't about an elevator ride. It was about something far deeper, far uglier. And in exactly 12 minutes, it would cost Rebecca Morrison everything she thought she had built. You see, what Rebecca didn't know, what she couldn't have known in her rush to judgment, in her desperate need to ride alone with her prejudice, was that Michael Chen wasn't just any professional arriving for a meeting. He was the new Senior Vice President of Operations for Morgan & Blake Associates, the largest consulting firm in the building. His first day, his first impression. And it had just been delivered by a woman who looked him in the eye and decided his race was enough reason to deny him basic human courtesy. Michael took a breath, straightened his tie, and pressed the call button for the second elevator. As he rode up alone, he pulled out his phone. He didn't call HR, he didn't call his attorney. He did something simpler, something quieter, something that would prove far more powerful. He opened his email and sent a message to the head of building security. Subject: CCTV request. Main lobby, elevator A, 8:14 a.m., today's date. The message was professional, polite. It simply stated that there had been an incident he wished to review for his personal records. He requested the footage be preserved. He included his new corporate credentials, his employee ID number, the exact timestamp. He hit send at 8:17 a.m. By 8:19 a.m., Rebecca Morrison had already made her first mistake. Rebecca worked on the 22nd floor for Silver Point Marketing Solutions, a mid-sized firm that rented half the level. She was a senior account manager. Successful by most standards. Well-paid. Important. Or at least that's what she told herself. The truth was more complicated, but the truth usually is. When she stepped off the elevator, she was shaking. Not from guilt, not from shame, from adrenaline, from the audacity. The sheer audacity of that man questioning her. How dare he make her feel like the bad person? She had every right to feel safe, didn't she? Every right to her comfort? She walked past the receptionist without a word, her heels clicking against the hardwood as she made her way to her office. She dropped her bag on the desk, set down her coffee, and stared out the window at the city below. Her reflection stared back. Still righteous, still justified. And then she made the call. At 8:21 a.m., Rebecca Morrison dialed building security. Yes, hi, this is Rebecca Morrison, Silver Point Marketing, floor 22. I need to report an incident. Her voice was steady, practiced. There was a man in the lobby this morning who made me feel very uncomfortable. He was trying to force his way into my elevator. And when I asked him politely to wait for the next one, he became aggressive and confrontational. I felt threatened. She paused. Let that word hang in the air. Threatened. I think he might be loitering in the building. I'm worried about safety. Can someone check the cameras and maybe escort him out? She described him. Asian male, dark suit, briefcase. Gave no name because she didn't know it, didn't need to. The description would be enough. The security dispatcher took notes, assured her someone would look into it immediately. Asked if she needed someone to come to her floor. She declined. Said she just wanted to make sure it was documented. Just in case. Just in case of what, Rebecca? What exactly were you afraid would happen? The call ended at 8:23 a.m. Rebecca felt better, safer, vindicated. She turned to her computer and started her workday as if nothing had happened. Because in her mind, nothing had. She had simply protected herself. Stood her ground. Wasn't that what everyone was supposed to do these days? But 4 floors below her, in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the entire financial district, Michael Chen was sitting across from the CEO of Morgan & Blake Associates, shaking hands and beginning his first official meeting as the newest member of the executive leadership team. The CEO smiled warmly. Welcome aboard, Michael. We've been looking forward to having you. Your reputation precedes you. Michael smiled back. Professional, gracious. But in the back of his mind, that elevator door kept closing. Kept closing. The head of building security was a 28-year veteran named James, though everyone just called him Chief. He'd seen everything in his time managing Preston Tower. Fights, thefts, affairs, medical emergencies. But what landed on his desk at 8:47 a.m. was something different. 2 reports. Same man. Same timestamp. Completely different stories. The first, an email from Michael Chen, newly credentialed SVP at Morgan and Blake Associates, requesting CCTV preservation for an incident at 8:14 a.m. in the main lobby. Professional, calm, no accusations, just a request for documentation. The second, a phone report from Rebecca Morrison claiming an aggressive Asian male had tried to force his way into her elevator and made her feel threatened. A request for investigation and possible removal from the premises. Chief leaned back in his chair, pulled up the footage, and watched. What he saw made his jaw tighten. Elevator A, 8:14 a.m. Crystal clear. Audio included because Preston Tower spared no expense on security systems. He watched Michael approach. Watched Rebecca block him. Heard every word. Would you mind catching the next one? Any particular reason? I just prefer riding alone. It's nothing personal. Not personal? Or not comfortable? I'm more comfortable this way. Because of me or because I'm Asian? And then the doors closing. Michael standing there, calm, composed, humiliated. Chief watched it 3 times, took notes. Checked Michael's credentials in the building system. Active, verified, senior vice president. Start date, today. Then he checked Rebecca Morrison's history. No prior incidents, clean record. But that didn't matter now. At 9:03 a.m., Chief picked up his phone and made 2 calls. The first was to the Director of Human Resources at Morgan and Blake Associates. A courtesy call. A heads up that one of their new executives had been involved in an incident, that the footage was available if they needed it for any reason. The tone was neutral, but the subtext was clear. Your guy did nothing wrong. And we have proof. The second call was to the property manager of the building. This one was less courtesy and more urgency, because filing a false report that targeted someone based on race wasn't just ugly. In this building with this management company with their zero tolerance policy on discrimination, it was a lease violation. And Rebecca Morrison had just put Silver Point Marketing Solutions on very thin ice. Michael's onboarding meetings continued through the morning. Introductions, strategy sessions, coffee that was too strong, and pastries that were too sweet. He smiled, shook hands, listened intently as the CFO walked him through quarterly projections. But at 10:15 a.m., there was a soft knock on the conference room door. The Director of Human Resources stepped inside. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a reputation for fairness. She asked if she could speak with Michael privately, just for a moment. The CEO nodded. The room cleared. Michael, she began, her voice gentle but professional. I received a call from building security about an incident this morning. I want you to know that we're aware of what happened. And I want to give you space to talk about it, if you need to. Michael looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since 8:14 a.m., he let the mask slip. Just a little. I appreciate that, he said quietly. I wasn't sure if I should bring it up on my first day. Didn't want to make waves. She sat down across from him. Michael, you didn't make waves. Someone else did. And I need you to know that what happened to you was unacceptable. We've reviewed the footage. We know exactly what was said and done. And I want to ask you directly, how do you want to handle this? Isn't that the question we all face when injustice finds us? How do we respond when someone's prejudice becomes our problem? Michael was silent for a moment. Then he spoke with the measured clarity of a man who had lived this before. Too many times before. I want the footage preserved as evidence. I want a formal record of what happened. And I want to know who she is, where she works. Because if she's comfortable doing that to me in an elevator, I guarantee I'm not the first person she's done it to. I just might be the first person who has the resources to do something about it. The director nodded. Her name is Rebecca Morrison. She works for Silver Point Marketing on floor 22. And as of about 30 minutes ago, building security has flagged her report as false and potentially discriminatory. The property manager is already reviewing Silver Point's lease terms. Michael absorbed this, processed it. then said something that surprised even himself. "I don't want her fired. I want her accountable. There's a difference." "I understand, and I think that's incredibly gracious of you. But Michael, you should also know, she called security and tried to have you removed from the building. She described you as aggressive and threatening. She lied, on record, and in doing so, she put you at risk." The weight of that settled over the room like fog, because they both knew what could have happened. What has happened to countless people who had the police called on them for simply existing in spaces where someone decided they didn't belong. "Then I want a formal complaint filed," Michael said. "Not just for me, for every person who doesn't have the title and the credentials to fight back. Because she didn't see a senior vice president this morning. She saw an Asian man, and she decided that was enough." The director extended her hand. "Consider it done." Rebecca Morrison was in a meeting when the office manager knocked on the conference room door. She excused herself, irritated at the interruption, and stepped into the hallway. "Rebecca, the property manager is here to see you. He's waiting in your office." Her stomach dropped. Just a little, just enough. When she walked into her office, the property manager was standing by her window, hands clasped behind his back. He was a tall man with silver hair and an expression that gave nothing away. "Miss Morrison, thank you for making time. Please sit down." She sat. He remained standing, a power play as old as offices themselves. "This morning at 8:21 a.m., you called building security to report an incident involving another tenant of this building. Is that correct?" "Yes," she said carefully. "There was a man who made me uncomfortable." "And you described him as aggressive and threatening?" "He was confrontational. I felt unsafe." The property manager opened his tablet, turned it toward her, pressed play. Rebecca watched herself on screen, watched the elevator, watched Michael approach, watched her own words condemn her. "Would you mind catching the next one?" The color drained from her face. "Miss Morrison, the man you reported is Michael Chen, the new senior vice president of operations at Morgan and Blake Associates. He is a tenant of this building, and according to this footage, which has been reviewed by myself, building security, and legal counsel, your report was not only false, but appears to have been motivated by racial discrimination." "That's not... You denied him access to a shared elevator. You told him you preferred riding alone, and when he asked if it was because he was Asian, you did not deny it. You simply closed the door in his face." Rebecca's hands were shaking now. "I have a right to feel safe." "You have a right to actual safety, not to fabricate threats based on someone's race. And Miss Morrison, what you did this morning violates our building's non-discrimination policy. More importantly, you filed a false report with security that could have resulted in serious harm to Mr. Chen. I didn't know who he was. And that's precisely the problem. You didn't need to know who he was. You just needed to see his race." The silence that followed was deafening. "Silverpoint Marketing Solutions will be receiving formal notice of this incident. Your employer will be given the option to address this internally. But I want to be clear. If anything like this happens again, it will be grounds for lease termination. Do you understand?" Rebecca nodded. Barely. The property manager left, and Rebecca Morrison sat alone in her office, staring at the closed door, finally understanding that the elevator doors she had shut that morning were about to close on something much bigger. Her career, her reputation, her carefully constructed world. By mid-afternoon, the story had traveled. Not publicly, not yet. But within the building's professional network, word moved like electricity through water. The CEO of Morgan and Blake Associates had personally called the CEO of Silverpoint Marketing Solutions. The conversation was brief, professional, but the message was clear. Your employee racially discriminated against our executive on his first day. Filed a false report to have him removed, and it's all documented on camera. How you handle this will determine our future business relationship. Morgan and Silver Point had a partnership worth 7 figures annually. That partnership was now under review. At 2:47 p.m., Rebecca Morrison was called into the managing director's office at Silver Point. She already knew why. What would you do if you were sitting in that chair? Facing the consequences of a 15-second decision that revealed who you really were. The managing director was a woman in her early 60s who had built Silver Point from nothing. She had no patience for anything that threatened what she had created, and Rebecca Morrison had just become a liability. "I've seen the footage," the managing director said without preamble. "I've spoken with the property manager, I've spoken with Morgan's CEO, and I've spoken with our legal team. Tell me in your own words what happened this morning." Rebecca tried. She tried to explain, to justify, to minimize. But every word that came out of her mouth sounded exactly like what it was. Excuses for inexcusable behavior. "I didn't mean it the way it looked." "Then how did you mean it, Rebecca?" "Because what I saw was one of our employees denying elevator access to someone, and then calling security to report them as threatening when they questioned that denial. Do you understand what that looks like? I made a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices. And now Silver Point is paying for them. We're under lease review. We've lost the trust of our largest client partner. And we're facing potential legal action. All because you couldn't share an elevator with an Asian man." The words hung in the air like an indictment, because that's exactly what they were. Effective immediately, you're on administrative leave pending a full investigation. You'll surrender your building access badge. You'll have no contact with clients. And Rebecca, you should probably contact an attorney, because Michael Chen has every right to pursue this further, and I wouldn't blame him if he did. Rebecca left the office at 3:14 p.m. She took the stairs. The footage didn't leak immediately. Michael had requested it remain internal while he decided how to proceed. But someone, somewhere in the chain, security guard, building manager, someone who thought the world needed to see, made a copy. 7 days after the incident, the video appeared online. No names, no context. Just 15 seconds of raw, undeniable prejudice captured in high definition. Woman refuses to share elevator with Asian man. Calls security after he questions her. It went viral in 4 hours. By the end of the first day, 2.3 million views. By the end of the second day, investigative journalists had identified the building. By the end of the third day, they had identified Rebecca. And then the world did what the world does. It judged, it condemned, it destroyed. Rebecca Morrison became the main character of the internet for exactly 8 days. Her LinkedIn profile was screenshot. Her Facebook pictures circulated. Her entire life was dissected by strangers who had never met her, but felt completely qualified to decide her fate. She was fired from Silver Point on day 5. Not for the elevator incident alone, but for the irreparable damage to the company's reputation and client relationships. The official statement was corporate and cold. Her name became searchable, permanently linked to racism, to entitlement, to everything people hated about casual, everyday discrimination, dressed up as personal preference. But Michael Chen? Michael stayed silent. He released one statement through Morgan and Blake Associates. "What happened to me is not unique. It happens every day to countless people who don't have the platform or resources to respond. I hope this moment serves as a reminder that our comfort is never more important than someone else's dignity. And I hope Miss Morrison learns from this, truly learns, and becomes better. That's all I have to say. Dignified, measured, human. And somehow that made Rebecca's actions look even worse. Michael Chen did file a lawsuit, not for money, for precedent. He sued the building management company for failing to adequately train staff on discrimination policies. He sued Silver Point Marketing for enabling a hostile environment through insufficient oversight. And yes, he sued Rebecca Morrison personally for defamation, emotional distress, civil rights violations. The case was settled out of court on a Tuesday morning in November. The terms were confidential, but sources close to the case confirmed that the settlement included mandatory anti-discrimination training for all building staff, a review of tenant screening policies, and a significant financial payment to be donated to organizations fighting racial discrimination. Rebecca Morrison's portion of the settlement required a public apology, completion of racial bias training, and community service with civil rights organizations. She released her apology on a Friday afternoon when news cycles were slow. I take full responsibility for my actions on the morning of the incident. What I did was wrong. It was hurtful. It was rooted in unconscious bias that I am now working to confront and change. I understand that my words and actions caused real harm, and I am deeply sorry. I am committed to doing the work to become better. It was written by her attorney. It sounded like it, but it was there, on record, forever. Michael Chen is still the senior vice president at Morgan & Blake Associates. He's been promoted once already. He speaks occasionally at conferences about workplace discrimination and the importance of accountability. He doesn't talk about the elevator much. He doesn't need to. The work speaks for itself. Rebecca Morrison moved to a different city. She works remotely now, in a job that doesn't require her name to be public. She completed her court-mandated training. She did her community service. Whether she learned anything, whether she truly changed, that's something only she can answer. The elevator in Preston Tower still runs, floor to floor, up and down, carrying people who will never know that 15 seconds in that space changed 2 lives forever. And maybe that's the point, because racism isn't always a burning cross or a slur shouted in anger. Sometimes it's just a woman in a beige coat who decides someone doesn't belong. Sometimes it's a closed door and a false report, and the confidence that her comfort matters more than someone else's humanity. The cameras are always watching. The truth always comes out. And the doors we close on others have a way of closing on us. So the question isn't what Rebecca did that morning in the elevator. The question is, what would you have done? And more importantly, what will you do the next time you're faced with a choice between your comfort and someone else's dignity? Because that moment is coming for all of us. And when it does, the cameras might not be rolling, but you'll know. You'll always know. If this story touched you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Like it, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the soul. Thank you for listening.